Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening from wherever you are. My name is Chinenye Uwadileke, and I am an Education USA advisor in Lagos, Nigeria. You're welcome to our student visa orientation for all those students who have been admitted for fall 2021. I'm very happy to have here with me in today's presentation a vice consul who is going to be talking to you about the process of applying to study for applying for your student visa and also answering all your questions about student visas. Without further ado, I would like to welcome here Kendra Miller. I'll just read out her bio. She recently arrived in Lagos, Nigeria as a consular officer, and she started working as a consular officer for the Department of State in October 2018 in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Her main roles in Sao Paulo were managing student outreach and social media. Before that, she was a civil servant working in the Near Eastern and South Central Asian Affairs Executive Office as a Foreign Service Assignments Officer in Washington, D.C. He has done short tour assignments to 10 countries and hopes to continue that work in the future. Kendra speaks French, Portuguese, and reads Russian and Greek. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and a Master's in Public Administration. She's a proud Clemson University grad, Go Tigers, and a native to Washington, D.C. Please welcome with me, Kendra Miller.
Hi, thanks for having us here today with all of you. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to talk about studying in the US. My time in college was beyond the best time that I've had in the States, so I'm really excited to talk to you all today.
Awesome. So before Kendra gives her presentation, I just wanted to tell you a bit about Education USA and what we do. We're a network of over 430 advising centers in 175 plus countries and territories around the world. And what we do is pretty simple. We help international students navigate the process of studying in the US by walking them through a 5-step process. So for step number 1, we help students research their options of over 4,000 accredited higher education institutions. For step number 2, we help students understand how to finance their studies. For step number 3, we assist students in the process of completing the application, the documents they need to submit, and all that they need to do to have a complete application. And step number 4 is why we're here today. We help students understand how to apply for their student visa. Our final step is to prepare for departure. We're not going to be talking about that today, but we're going to be focused on how you can apply for your student visa, interview for your student visa, and obviously get that student visa so that you can start your studies in the US. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Kendra, who will give a presentation. And after her short presentation, we'll take questions. So I encourage you to start typing your questions in this comment section. Don't hesitate. No question is stupid. She's here to answer those questions, and we hope to get through all of them before the end of the hour. So Kendra, the ball is in your court.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen with you all to start this presentation. So first of all, welcome to this presentation on US student visas. The Lagos Consulate, US Consulate here in Lagos welcomes you to this presentation. We'll go ahead and start. Next. Okay, first, congratulations. If you've been accepted to a US school, that's absolutely amazing. I congratulate you. Let's talk about how to apply for that visa. So one, you want to know this website, ng.usembassy.gov/visas. This is where you're going to go to schedule an appointment, to understand the process, and to get answer a lot of questions that are added here. We often update them, so I definitely advise you to update that, look at that as often as possible. All right, types of student visas. You're probably familiar with a lot of these, but I'll go through them real quick. F1, students, full-time students with a defined end of stay, they have the form I-20. F2 are spouses and children of those F1s, and they have to have their own I-20. And then we have our J1s, which are exchange visitors, scholars. They typically are experienced in the US, be used here in Nigeria. And they have a different form, CS 2019. And then there are M1s. These are very specific types of programs, vocational, they're typically non-academic. They're for a year and they have a similar form to F1, the I-20. When should you apply? For this fall semester? Now. Try and schedule your appointment as soon as possible. Note that the visas cannot be issued. If you're approved, they cannot be issued until 120 days before the start date that is listed on that I-20 that your school will issue you. You won't be able to enter the US until 30 days before the program start date. So make sure you're reading that I-20 to understand what's on there, okay? SEVIS fee. This is a fee that often people forget. It is a separate fee. It's not a fee that we take here at Department of State. It's specifically related to school, and it's $350. And you use the form I-901 to show that it was paid. You can pay this at fmjfee.com. I advise try to go look that website up and make sure you understand all the things you need to do. The I-20 form. This is essential to the interview. It's the first thing we're going to ask you when you're at the interview window. It's issued by the school when you get accepted. Make sure that the information on there is correct. Oftentimes, this is where things kind of start to fall apart. The I-20 is not correct. If it's not correct, tell the school that you have seen a mistake and you need a new one. You'll need to have this form. You'll need to get the SEVIS fee. You'll have to apply for that visa in the United States. And all of this needs to be done with the I-20 to get a driver's license to drive when you're here, when you're in the US. You'll need this I-20 form. Okay, documents pertaining to the interview process. I-20, like I said, absolutely necessary. Your passport. The DS-160, which is the sheet you get once you complete that initial visa application, your confirmation letter, and proof of SEVIS payment, the I-901 form. Okay, the interview process. So you get to the interview window. The consular officer will ask you questions. Now, note that all of us are trained to do these interviews quite regularly. So we have these questions down. We're asking them because we're looking for very detailed information, specific information about you and why you're doing this program. You're accepted to school, that you can pay for the program, that you're prepared for this course of study. A lot of these programs are very difficult. And we want to know that you have intent to leave the United States at the conclusion of your studies. If you're failing to meet these criteria, these are the reasons that visas get refused. Remember, you're not allowed to bring your phone. Okay, so if there's something that you wanted to show, make sure you print it out beforehand. Okay, be honest about your travel plans. Everyone has a different situation. Everyone's not specific. Be prepared to answer any questions that are asked of you, especially about financial abilities. I advise you to make sure you understand your finances. Understand if your mother, your father, any family is paying, understand those finances and why and where they're coming from. Don't do the rehearsed speech. Just talk about the program. You're doing this because you want to study in the US. Why? You want to learn something new. You want to learn a new culture. Tell us about that. And don't use touts. Okay, we don't need to do that. These are a couple of examples. Every interviewing officer has a different set of questions they like to ask. These are pretty typical. Why did you pick this school? That's a question that I ask often. I want to know why this school. What's specific about it? Does it have to relate to your life? Don't tell me about, all the awards the school has won. Tell me about why you found the school and why you want to go there. Did you apply to other schools? Who's paying? And what are your plans when you finish school? I mean, we all have career goals. Tell me those goals. Renewal. So this is often done if you plan to start your semester in the fall, say, make sure your syllabus is up to date. Make sure you have transcripts that you have done prior semesters and that you've completed them fully, and talk about what the next steps are if you're asking to renew a visa. These are a little bit easier to explain to us, but we want to make sure you have all the information necessary. And if you have more questions, check out these websites. TravelDocs is very good for the visa application. Travel.state.gov, I cannot stress enough how important this website is. I often refer people to this one. Make sure you understand what's there and how it relates to your specific application. And of course, educationusa.state.gov. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Kendra. Welcome back to me, I guess. And thank you for that very to the point presentation on how to apply for your student visa and all those links you gave all the students out there, to get additional information on the process. So I'm going to go straight on into our Q&A for the day. And one of the most frequently asked questions we receive all the time from students is, I have an admission for fall 2021 and I want to apply for my student visa now, but there are no available appointment dates. When will the consular section open up appointment dates for student visas?
I actually just was talking about this. There are appointments open right now. As soon as you have that acceptance from your school and your school has at least sent the I-20 to you, go ahead and apply, schedule that appointment. If it doesn't work, if there's not a date, just schedule that appointment, send an email to lagosniv.state.gov and explain the time that your semester starts. We are trying to open up more appointments for student visas specifically to prepare for the fall semester. So keep looking on that website. You'll see a lot of changes. You'll see a lot of updates and open appointments. So I definitely advise you to do it as soon as possible, right now.
Excellent. That's great. That's great to know. So just to reiterate, forgive me if my connection is a bit unstable. Just to reiterate, students can go ahead and schedule whatever dates are available.
Yes.
And if it's not favorable, let's say they're starting school in August, but the earliest date they saw was December, that's obviously not going to work. They send an email to lagosniv@state.gov. All right, every student should be writing that email address down because that's such useful information to have. Thank you, Kendra.
Yeah, first schedule the appointment because there are a lot of openings. So you might not, you might get one on first try.
All right, perfect. So one other thing that students also want to know is when they schedule the appointment, you listed a few documents that they should bring along. Now, for students who are fully funded, do they need to come with additional documentation proving that maybe they can take care of their flights or any other thing that's not covered on their fully funded offer?
So we're going to start first with the I-20 with that. So if this is a fully funded program and it's funded by scholarships, it should be on that I-20. So make sure you're reviewing that. If you have scholarships, they should be on there. The school should know, and they should be putting it on that form. Because a lot of times, if it's fully funded, we don't need to see anything and we don't need to ask any other questions because we see the form, we see the I-20, we see that you have a full scholarship, full ride, and you're good to go on the finances. Now, if it's not fully funded and you're putting down sponsored by family, sponsored by relatives, then be prepared to talk about that. Be prepared to talk about what your sponsoring family member does and how much they'll be able to provide. It should be on the form, but the interviewing officer will have questions about where this funding is coming from. So just be prepared to answer questions. I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly what documents to bring because I don't think every interview is going to be the same. It's different situations for everyone, but have a good idea of exactly how you plan to financially support yourself doing this program.
Okay, that's great to know. if a student is denied, or maybe they've been denied, or they were denied for fall 2020, is it okay for them to reapply? Would they be given consideration, given that the dates are so few and they're not enough? Would they still be able to reapply for student visa?
Absolutely. There's no prohibition on you applying for another visa. If you're refused, you can schedule an appointment, you can apply again, and you will be re-interviewed and reassessed again. It's a different interview, it's a new interview, it's a new chance. There aren't really any statistics on how that one will go, but it's definitely up to you. But there was no prohibition on you applying again. You absolutely can.
Okay. Would you say it's safe or it's okay for students to sort of like schedule visa appointments even before their I-20s come in?
That's a tricky one because at the interview, we're not going to be able to do the interview without the I-20. So if the school has told you that they can get you that I-20 in time for your scheduled appointment, great, make sure that happens. What I would advise, go on the website, see what appointments are available, and also talk to the school and let them know, you know, this is a very special time. We're all dealing with this very different time, that they're probably aware of it too. They're aware that they need to get the I-20 as soon as possible. So just talk to them, talk to your advisors there.
Okay. So I have a number of students that have their parents, maybe they're like, the students are maybe 16, 17, and they want their parents to accompany them, you know, to help them settle in. It's their first time in a different country, it's their first time going to college. Are there appointments for parents who want to accompany, say, B1, B2 visas, or is it just exclusively for students at this point?
Right now, we're open for most types of visas. So most types of visas have an availability to schedule an appointment. I will say with the upcoming season, there will be a lot more student visa appointments available than other visas because we want to make sure that we're, you know, meeting the demand of students. But anyone who wants to accompany their student will need to apply for the B1, B2, and that will be on their own application, on their own merits. But there are appointments available for B1, B2s, and I encourage people to schedule if that's something they're trying to do.
Awesome. Okay, let's move away from appointments. I just have some questions coming in on payment of application fees. So a number of students who might have been denied a visa. Okay, there's a student who was denied a visa last year. And after that, they paid another visa application fee to reapply, but it was late. It was too late for them to resume. Can they still use that same receipt? I guess the question is, how long is a visa receipt valid for? How long is it valid for?
Okay, so that is a good question. We did change the dates for valid visa receipts, and I believe it's been extended because of COVID. We had a lot of people who paid last year and weren't able to schedule the appointments right after paying. I would email lagosniv@safe.gov to confirm the date that their visa receipt would be valid till. And they'll be able to let you know, because I don't want to give you a date and then, you know, that might not work out. But there have been extensions of those visa fees. So just make sure you check with that email address so that you know if you need to pay that fee or not before your appointment.
Okay, awesome. Now I have another question on CIVIS. So same question for CIVIS. How long is a CIVIS fee valid for, or CIVIS receipt valid for? Considering the closure of the consulate and all of that.
Right, of course. Yeah, and I understand that the CIVIS fee is not something that we here at State Department control. It's a DHS, Department of Homeland Security fee. So that's something you have to contact them about. You could go to fmjfee.com, and there's probably a frequently asked questions site there that you can look at to talk about the fees. They may be doing something similar because of COVID, but I can't speak to that because it's not something that we regulate here. It's a different agency, but I'm sure they have information on that.
Okay, that's good to know. Moving on to forms and all the documents that students might need. So a student is asking if they've completed the DS-160 and there are few changes, you know, maybe They accepted one school, they completed the form for one school, but now they want to go to another, or they made a mistake on the form. Some students would put maybe official passport instead of regular, or just minor things. Can they go in to make changes after they've already submitted the form, or is that something that they have to fill out a new form?
For the DS-160, correct?
Correct, the DS-160.
Okay, so the DS-160 is something that managed by ustraveldocs.org, and they have an actual step-by-step process on how to fix issues, and they have contact information, phone numbers that you can call if you need to make changes to your documents there. I think that we might have it, I think we have the website on that presentation, but we also have on our website in frequently asked questions, all the contact information for USA Travel Docs and how you can call them and change any applications before the interview. So if it's something small or minor, maybe go ahead with the interview, and at the interview, make sure you tell the officer, hey, this is something that I wasn't able to catch. It's different. And then explain the reason why it's not the same thing.
All right, that's good to know. Now, one question that we get a lot as Education USA advisors is, who are my dependents? As Nigerians, your dependents is literally any and everybody. But I know in America, that's not so. So what are you guys expecting when you put that question, who are your dependents? Can you expatiate a bit more?
Yeah. So in our regulations in F2, which is is defined as your spouse or your children. Those are the only two categories that fall into that category, into F2. So the person you're married to and your actual children, you might have to provide, a document showing that you're married and that these are your children. But essentially, those are the only two dependents that we consider for the F2 category.
Okay. But when a consular officer asks a student, do you have family in the US? The family for us is like I said, everybody. And
Right.
Sometimes the younger students would be confused. For them, family could be an aunt who's probably not even a blood relative, but for the longest time, they've called that person auntie or an uncle. So how do you also define family?
So that's a great question. If a consular officer asks you, what family do you have in the United States? If someone is in the United States that you consider a family member, tell the consular officer that person, where they live. If they're not family, they're not related to you, and you don't really have any contact with them, and you don't know who they are, you don't know anything about them, they're just far off. That's not something we're going to ask about. What we want to know is people you have ties to. If you have an aunt, if you have an uncle, and maybe these are people that can support you in school, maybe not. It really depends on the situation, but just be honest about people that you know in the United States, essentially.
All right, good one. Thank you. So now we have quite a few graduate students who are recently married, or maybe they've been married for a while and they want to go along with their spouses, so their dependents, which would be F2s. Is there any penalty, or are they going to be looked at differently, or not favorably reviewed because they have, their only family or their closest family member accompanying them? That's one worry a lot of graduate students have. Can I travel with my spouse? When should I travel? Should I go and settle down first and then come back later for them? Or should they go with from the jump, from the get? What's your advice for married students?
Yeah. So I would advise that first interview, when you're interviewing for your F1 and you're married, tell the consular officer, hey, I'm married, my spouse is not here with me. If they're not here applying with you at that time, my spouse might come later. Tell the officer that. Tell the officer, right now we're not going together. Or if they are here with you, then you're applying together. Explain how you can financially support both of you in the United States. That's going to be a question that will be asked. I think a lot of times there's confusion is whether it's penalized because someone travels later. No, we just want to know the whole truth. just tell us right at the interview, I'm married, I have children, they're not here today because we don't know. We don't know if they want to travel. We don't know if they want to quit their job. We don't know. And that's fine. Be honest, say, we just haven't decided. And then that's something that you're going to decide later. And that's fine. Just tell that.
Thank you. I'm just going to go off your phrase, tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So that's a phrase we use in Nigeria. The truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And I really like that. And I'll keep resounding it to our students. So what happens? I have this question from Simisola Obanla. She's asking, what happens if I can't remember my social security number? I was on a summer work and travel program, a J1 visa, that enabled me to have social security number, but now I can't remember the number. Can I put doesn't apply in the space for social security?
That's a very specific and very interesting question. I would say that's going to be that's a question you should probably email about. Yeah. If you're applying for a student visa and you have a social security number, the officer is going to want you to explain why and more details. If you're trying to fill out your form prior to that and you want to know how to do that, email lagosniv.sa.gov and explain your situation, because that's very specific. We don't see it often, and I don't want to give you the information that will you have you completing the form incorrectly. But do be prepared to explain that at the interview, because whether or not you do the form correctly, the interviewing officer is going to want to know more details.
Okay, thank you. So I have another question from Ajagbe Abib. He's asking, or he's referring to the GRE exam, and he says, the GRE exam was waived for most applications in 2021 due to the pandemic, and he received the fully funded offer in the US. He's wondering if not writing a standardized test, I'm just going to generalize now, if not writing a standardized test will have an adverse effect on his student visa application.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, yeah.
But many schools were also test optional for SAT and TOEFL. Right. So,
yeah, absolutely. First of all, congratulations on your full offer. That's amazing. Second of all, yes, I know we hear a lot about standardized tests. Many schools are moving away from them. It's not something that I personally ask very often. I think different situations mean different things. Different schools require, a GRE, some have waived it, some require SAT, ACT, all of these things. However, just because you don't take it has no bearing on the decision for your case. The decision for your case is it's a totality of things. So if the school has waived that GRE, I wouldn't worry about that. It's not something that we're going to ask you. It's a very different situation these days for all of us. So we're all adjusting.
All right. Thank you. I have just received a few more dependent related questions. I'm going to go back a bit to asking questions on dependents. Okay. And the question I have is, does including a dependent as a family member for visa interview purpose change their visa class status on the visa appointment schedule and history? Okay, so this is the situation. A woman applied for a visa for her daughter, and when she applied, she picked F2. But when she booked an appointment, when she received the appointment confirmation, it said F1. So she's a bit confused and she's wondering if, she's done something wrong. Is that going to be an issue during the interview? She's coming to interview with her daughter. So she's already started her PhD program and coming back to take her daughter with her.
Okay, so she already has the F1, yes?
She has the F1, but she's renewing. So when she comes, she'd have to renew and then take her daughter.
Right. Yes, so if she's renewing, yes, she'll still be an F1 and her daughter will be the F2. And that's fine. They should have separate applications, and one application should say F1 and one should say F2. So just make sure that she has two separate applications and they say different things, and she has two I-20s, one for herself that's renewing and one for her daughter as a F2 derivative.
All right. Awesome. That's a good answer. Thank you so much. Now, this question is from Arogundade Oyin Consola. He would like to know what happens if you use a relative as a point of contact instead of the school official. Um, I don't know if that question makes sense. You know, on the DS-160, we ask you for a point of contact who can, I guess, confirm
Mm,
what information you put. Is it
yeah,
okay to use a relative as opposed to a school official?
that's completely up to you. If you are using a school official, we see it often just because some people don't have anyone in the United States to put on that form, so they put the school official. That's fine. If you have an aunt or an uncle or a cousin who lives in the United States, you know, as an emergency contact, put that person down because that's essentially what that spot is. Someone to kind of reach out to if you're in the United States.
Awesome. And for those who are married, they're asking about documentation. So this question is from Abdul Hafiz Adegoke. He's asking, is any other marriage certificate acceptable other than the one obtained from the registry? So you know, here in Nigeria, people really get married in a church and get like a certificate, or they go to the registry and do that as well. So he's, I guess, or the mosque and get something as well. So I guess he's asking if it's not from the registry, is that still okay?
Yeah, I will say the key with determining the relationships between spouses and the children is just verifying that these relationships are current, they're real, they're here. You know, if you have a document saying that you're married, you know, bring that with you. The officer might ask for it. If your wife or your husband is with you, explain how long have you been together, you know, how give us some information about your relationship and you know maybe the plan for when you're there. It's just we just want to make sure that we understand who this person is to you and who and what the support system they're providing. So yes, any marriage document, bring that, bring you know any documents that you have. I won't say that we're going to look at it. Okay, I give a caveat for all documentation. And one of the confusing bits is that people assume that we're going to want to look at all of your documentation, and that's not true. We have a lot of information available to us already. So if you don't ask for documents, it's not because we don't want to see them or we just didn't need them. It's just because we probably have the information available somewhere else. So it's just different circumstances for different people. So if you have something, bring it with you. I always advise it's better to be more prepared, over prepared than under prepared. If no one looks at anything, well, you can still say, you know, I did everything I absolutely could do. Okay.
I completely agree with you. Over prepared than to have
Yeah.
to go and come back. So
Yes.
talking about documentation, a number of students are concerned. Can they come for an interview with an printed electronic copy of their I-20? I guess some students are trying to dodge the $100 or so they need to have a physical copy mailed to them, or they don't have the time to receive that document before their interview. So is it okay to just print off what was sent by email
Mhm.
and come along with that for the visa interview?
Yeah, and this is a really good question. I'm glad you asked because it is something that we've decided to accept. Normally we would not, but with the COVID situation, things are very different. But we will accept a printed out copy. We might ask more questions and maybe just kind of make sure the document is fine and it makes sense. But that's where we'll accept the printed out electronic copy.
Awesome, good to know. Now, if a student has already started school online,
Mhm.
say in the spring or even fall 2020, but now they want to resume physically, do they need a new I-20 or is it just fine for the school to update it and see this and then they can come with what they received for fall 2020?
So I would advise if the school says that they're going to keep the I-20, but they want to update it, we will accept that because that's the school making sure the document is correct and up to date. However, the officer will ask why it says that you started school in fall 2020 and you're here in April 2021. So ideally, a new I-20 is preferred. However, we do understand circumstances don't always allow for that. So talk to the school, see if you can get an I-20. If not, ask them to make sure that it's updated correctly so that we don't have any issuing problems of validity of visa and limit, none of that. We don't want to have that issue. So
That's good to know. Now I have a question from Okweyemi Eko. So he's already started or she's already started classes online due to COVID. And they're wondering if it will be a problem to book an appointment, a student visa appointment to resume for in-person classes. I don't know if that's the question they want to ask, or if maybe they're asking if you see a student at your window who's already started online, is it going to be a problem when they say now they want to go to the US? Are you going to be thinking, why don't they just continue and graduate online? I mean, they've already started.
Mhm. No, I mean, we all want to study in person, right? I mean, that was the best part about college is being with cool new people and experiencing it and being in the classroom. Yeah, no, it makes sense to want to do it in person. And now that we're kind of moving towards a more healthier standpoint, yes, we do understand that. And you might get asked the question, okay, so you're online, tell me why you're going in person, tell me how that's going to look. Just be prepared to talk about it.
Okay, good. So I have another question from Atsuma Priya Eromo Onanefe. Sorry if I mispronounced that, forgive me. But the question is, if someone applied to two different schools and went for an interview in June and was denied, and later the other school grants the student a full scholarship,
Mhm.
what will the student do? Is it okay for them to reapply and show up? Will that help their case?
I can't say whether or not it would help their case, but if you got another acceptance letter and a full ride to school, yeah, go ahead, apply for an interview, apply for a visa, schedule that interview, and a full scholarship is really great. And if that's the case with this person, congratulations, that's very amazing. It can be very hard to get a full ride to a lot of schools, so I understand. But yeah, go ahead and apply. It's not a negative point. We always reassess people for a new interview, so do that.
We're talking about funding. Are those students who have full funding required to come with additional documentation, maybe a bank statement showing that they can fund, like maybe their travel to the US or, other expenses?
Mhm.
Is that something you
Yeah.
would ask
Mhm.
for?
Absolutely. So if it's not funding from the school and it's funding from family or friends, then they'll have to explain why and how those other people will be paying, will be supporting them. If they're paying tuition, tuition is very expensive. So they have to provide information on, this person's job, how much they make, are they paying for many, many other people? I know it's very common here for uncles and aunts to pay for education, and that's fine. We just want to know more about your uncle. Like, tell us, like, what does he do? Like, how long has he worked? Like, how much does he make? These are things that you should be prepared to ask, to answer. I won't say that we're going to look at the bank statement because different officers have different practices. But these are definitely common questions across the board. Is we want to know about this person that's paying. We want to know why they're paying for you and how, if they're paying for many other people as well. So,
Oh,
like I said, tell the truth, be
yeah.
honest and open. Mhm.
I think sometimes students don't think about all the other people they're paying for. They just say, I have this uncle that can pay for me.
Mhm.
But I mean, the bigger question is, what if they have two or three other children? If they're paying for many people, I guess that is something that they need to think about before they show
Yeah,
up.
and it's
Like,
not something you can't overcome. It's something that happens a lot. But just talk about it, explain it.
okay, that's good to know. Now, I have this question from Gideon Olubenga. Let me just provide some context. There's currently some delay in issuing passports, Nigerian passports in Nigeria at the moment. Many students, even for the last SAT, there were so many students who could not get their passports renewed in time to take the standardized test. So he's worried and he's asking, what do you do if your passport has less than 6 months validity from your visa interview date and you're still in the process of renewal? Is there any sort of concession that could be made for students who have started the process of renewing but simply cannot get their hands on a new passport booklet?
Yeah, that's like a much bigger issue. Unfortunately, we can't. There are hard rules to enter the United States with that passport that may or may not be valid after a certain period of time. Now, sometimes it's not a problem. We have issued visas and passports that have a shorter amount of validity, but then you could come across problems coming back to Nigeria as well. So I can't advise on what Nigerian guidelines are on passports, getting back into the country, and when you'll get those back. We do look at those visa validities and the passport validity when we issue visas. And I think it's going to have to be a very specific case situation. If you have a passport right now and you're scheduling an appointment and it's maybe only has a few months left on it, really think about the schedule for your school. Maybe think about scheduling later, because if you schedule now and you get your visa now and your passport expires, that's going to be a problem, so make sure you're looking at the timeline.
Okay. I have a somewhat technical question. So if a student paid for the visa fee using this passport that still is, exactly 6 months valid, and then realizes that by the time they get an interview, they would not be able to use that passport to interview because they have less than 6 months validity, can they still use that visa receipt, but with a new passport? Or I know the passport number is tied to the visa receipt. Can they just bring both documents, the old passport, the visa receipt, new passport, to show that they're one and the same person? Or you have to repay or pay for another visa?
No. So before the interview, you get a new passport, and you bring the old passport, bring the visa receipt, and bring your new passport when you get to the interview. And if you can do an email beforehand, because it's something we can do, we can make the change before your interview. So if you can do that, email Lagos NIV at state.gov and give them the new information. However, if you're not able to do that, come to the interview with all those things, the old passport, the new passport, and the visa, and explain that you got a new one. And then we can make that change then. Just might take a little bit longer, but it's something we can do.
All right. That's great to know. Thank you so much for all those answers. I trust the students are listening. We're receiving tons of questions. So I'm going to ask a few more questions on funding, and then we'll go into the visa interview proper and questions about the visa interview. So this question from Okoro Ikechukwu. He says, a student that already has a sponsor but intends to take a loan in the US as an alternative funding plan, will this strengthen or hurt their case when they come for their visa interview? So you already have a sponsor, but probably the sponsor is only saying they can sponsor you for 1 year, and after 1 year, you have to find a plan B, and plan B is to take a loan. I mean, in the interest of being honest and in the interest of full disclosure, they tell you this. Will this hurt them or help them?
I can't say if it'll hurt or help. I do think that if that's the plan that you have in place, tell the interviewing officer that's your plan for now. I would also do the research first on the loan that there are a lot of different parameters with that, getting a loan in the United States. I would make sure you have that researched and down, and you can explain exactly how you're trying to do that. I couldn't speak to specific situations. It's really going to be case by case on whether or not that's going to help or hurt you in the interview. It's also up to the interviewing officer.
All right, it's up to the interviewing officer. So you want to probably take your chances, do your research, like she says, and make sure you come, fully formed answers about how much that loan is even going to cost you in the long run. At Education USA, we really don't encourage students to take loans, especially if you're just going to a regular program and not like a highly selective program that has great returns on investment. Really think if your family can help fund your education before. Question about funding is, let me just see. Okay, this question is not about funding, but Efe is asking, is it possible to apply for my visa interview in other countries like the United Kingdom?
Yes.
That is good to know. I did not know that.
So however,
get on a plane and go off somewhere close by, they can do that.
Yes, I mean, I will tell you though, the interviewing officer in the UK is going to ask, why are you here and not in Lagos? If that's where you live. If you live in Lagos and you're traveling, miles and miles and miles to do an interview somewhere else, you're going to have to be prepared to explain that. However, it's not technically prohibited to apply outside of your zone. It's just encouraged that you apply for the visa in the place that you live.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so Miss Oma Onyejekwe is asking, what if the bank statement presented to the school was that of an uncle before the issuance of the I-20? When applying for the visa, are you supposed to get another bank statement from your uncle, or can you present your parents' bank statement since the scholarships offered by the school has made going to the school more affordable by the parents? That was a pretty long question, but I hope you got it. I can repeat it if you need me to.
No, yeah, I understand. I've seen this many times at the window. So when you do that I-20 and you've told the school, my uncle is sponsoring me, they put that on the I-20. They put a family member, they put the person's name and how much is in that person's account. So the interviewing officer uses that document to form their interview. So they're going to ask you, your uncle is listed here sponsoring you for this amount of money. Okay, what does he do? How much does he make? If at that time your uncle is no longer the one sponsoring you, you're going to have to explain to the officer why and what changed and who is doing the sponsoring. And then they're going to ask the questions about that sponsoring person. It's a little bit more complicated. So just be sure that whenever you're presenting information for the I-20, that it's correct and up-to-date information, because we really use that I-20 to form this interview. So it needs to be as correct as possible.
Okay, that's so. I mean, if I may summarize your response, if you've submitted your uncle's bank statements and they haven't issued your I-20 yet, you might want to reach out to the school to tell them that it's now your parents that are sponsoring, so that even before you show up for your visa interview, that updated information is there, so you don't have to explain it was uncle first and now it's parents. You have all that sorted for you. So thank you so much. Now let's talk about the visa interview proper, because we have so many questions from students. He's wondering, what do you want me to say? I'm not rehearsed. This is me talking. I prepared, but now I sound like a robot. Now, how can an unmarried student show strong ties to Nigeria? Okay, so many students are worried that they're being denied because they can't show that they have ties to their home country. And they're wondering, what are strong ties even? Like, how does a student who doesn't have a spouse or have a house show that they're coming back?
Yeah, I get this question a lot at the window. It really depends. Each person is in a different place in their life, especially when it comes to school. Someone applying for a bachelor's degree, maybe a younger person may not have established much, but then we want to know about the reason they're studying. We want to know why, we want to know where, we want to know what the plan is, what the career goals, what they've done to get to this position, what work they've put in. We want to know that it all makes sense. Okay. We don't want rehearsed answers. We don't want like a whole speech. We just want to talk to you. We want you to talk normally and calmly about what you want to do and why you want to do it. If you can explain these things correctly, the interview will go much better. The ties thing, it's a hard question because it really is dependent on the person's situation in life, where they are. Because we get students of all ages doing all types of programs. So the one situation doesn't apply to someone else. And I don't want to be, specific to only young people apply for student visas, because that's not true. Lots of people want to study. So I think you really have to talk about what your situation is, what you're doing now. Are you working right now? Are you working in an area that's similar to the area that you want to study in? And what do you want to do next? Do you want to, start an organization here in Lagos that has to do with the study program you're doing? We want to know more about that.
Okay. Thank you so much. Now, the question we get quite a lot is, if a student is applying to only one school or has applied to only one school, probably were applying. The school admitted them before they could send in their other applications, and they thought, you know what? Why stress myself? I already got in. Why should I, bother applying to other schools? And they're worried.
Mhm.
Would just applying to one school affect their chances of getting a visa?
No, I'm not going to say that applying to one school is on my automatic no. That's not correct. I will say, why did you apply to only one school? Because as American, we do apply to a lot of schools. So we're, constantly trying to get many acceptances to decide which school is the best school for us. So when we look at that, we just want to know why did you apply to one school? Because sometimes application fees are very expensive and you could only afford to do this one. Or maybe you applied to one school because that is the school you want to go to and you don't want to go anywhere else. Say that. Tell the officer, I didn't apply anywhere else because I didn't want to go anywhere else. I wanted to go here. Why? Why is that? It's not a negative. It's just, it will be a negative if you can't explain why. If you can't just be honest about it. Like, oh yeah, I got in, it was easy. It gave me a scholarship, a little money here, it was great. Like, okay, well, give us the whole story.
Okay, thank you. So I just got three more questions on bank
Mhm.
statement. If you don't mind answering them. So
Yeah.
Lawal MA is asking, I have bank statements of accounts I used in January. Can I reuse it after 4 months? Or how long is a bank statement valid for? I mean, what duration do you want to see? How,
Mhm.
how old is too old, I guess?
Yeah, so it really depends on if that interview is going to ask for those documents. Sometimes the officer won't ask to see those statements. I would say you don't want to show something that's from 2019 or 2020. You want to show something that shows now, in a steady over a period of time. I mean, I wouldn't give you a range, but bring as much as you can. Show maybe bank statements, maybe pay slips, maybe anything like that. But I do want to stress that the officer might not ask to see any of that. So bring what you can. Don't stress too much about it. Just be able to explain it. If you can explain that, it's even better.
Okay. So Gideon Olugbenga is asking, I run a business of mine and would be presenting a bank statement of my business along with my company's incorporation document, which is also in my name. Is this an acceptable proof of funding, a business account as opposed to a personal account?
So that'll depend. If it's your business that you're running, then the officer is going to ask about the business and why and how much it makes and what you do. And these are all sponsor questions. If you separate yourself from the business and the business is your sponsor, the officer is going to ask about your sponsor and if that sponsor can support you over studying. It's really going to be in that interview. Bringing corporation documents, bringing statements, all that's fine. But again, actually talking about it is what's going to be important, not necessarily the document.
Not necessarily document. Good. This question is from Kenzie Quichis. I have a very important question. How do you handle a student that stutters? Does this hurt the student during the interview? As it might seem, the student is not confident enough, whereas the student just stammers. What would your advice be for students who may have, a stuttering challenge?
I will say something completely a blanket one for this one because a lot of the students who come to these interviews are nervous and that's completely understandable. I always tell people like, take a deep breath, step back, calm. Now, if someone actually has a legitimate stutter, absolutely not would I consider that negative. You can tell we're trained to interview and we interview a lot. I've been interviewing for 3 years, so I can tell if someone is nervous, if someone is in a situation where they're just, not saying one thing or another, or if they have a stutter. I've interviewed people with stutter, and that's just the situation it is, and that's not a negative against them. We just go a little bit slower. That's it.
would it help for that student to maybe start off by saying, forgive me, I stutter,
Mhm.
just be a bit more patient with me, or would you rather just detect that yourselves?
It's up to them. I don't want anyone to have to feel they have to tell me something like that if they don't want to. I will do my best. If they would prefer, I'm happy to have them say, hey, I have a stutter, so I might go a little bit slower, or it might take longer, and that's fine. And I appreciate that. I just don't want anyone to feel like they're being singled out or separated in any way.
Awesome. Thank you. So this question is from Goldin Mizwe. And Goldin is asking, does being over 45 affect me during a visa interview, a student visa interview, if I'm applying for a master's program? The question is there any age limit when applying for a student visa? And
Absolutely.
I would just add, like, if you have like a 25-year-old applying
Mhm.
for a bachelor's program
Mhm.
or over 50 applying for a graduate program, do you guys like look at them and be like, you know, why
Mhm.
are you coming or why are you just going to school?
Um, the age for applying for a student visa absolutely does not matter. What will come into is the questions that are asked. If you're 40 years old and you're applying for a bachelor's or a master's degree, the officer will probably ask, well, what have you been up to? Like, what are you doing? What has your career been like? Are you changing careers? Are you starting a whole new job? Like, why now have you decided to kind of go back to school? And
Hmm.
there are perfectly valid reasons for that. Okay. It's just about explaining it, saying, well, I did this for 20 years and I don't want to do it anymore. And I want to do this. Say that, tell the officer, I want to study this. I want to do this instead. And that's perfectly fine. There's absolutely no age limit.
Okay. I just want to pause and say thank you to all our students who are asking amazing questions. This has been a great conversation. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. So I'm going to take maybe 3 more questions and then call it a day. But if you want to write in any questions that were not answered to lagosniv@state.gov, I'm sure, there are people behind the scenes who would be happy to provide a response. But I'm just going to take a question from a student, Onyagba Henry. He's asking, if I have a spouse who has a pending immigrant visa with me as a dependent, and I have a fully funded MBA admission, how does the pending petition affect my F1 visa? And how does the F1 affect the immigrant visa petition? Like, can he receive a student visa whilst he's still waiting for his immigrant visa to come out?
So that's going to be a very specific situation. The officer will be able to access that information on your pending immigrant visa, and they're going to ask you about it. They're going to ask, when did you do it? When did you interview? What's the status of it? And you'll need to be ready to explain that. It's not negative. It just really depends on where you are at in that process and how it has to relate to you doing a student program. It's not an impediment. It's just something that you're going to have to explain, and the office is going to have to decide how that works with the program. But that's very specific.
So a few questions about when a student gets their visa. So when a student graduates, this student is asking, I hope to do the OPT, the optional practical training, so as to gain work experience and get my foot in the door for that eventual job.
Mhm.
However, that some students are being given a slip with clear instructions to depart the US as soon as their degree program is over. Does this mean that international students can no longer apply for OPT?
I have not heard that. I've seen some who have been doing OPT and returned after that. I have not heard of anyone not being able to do OPT, so I can't speak to that. It's a different program that manages that. I would need to know exactly who it is that's giving the slip, and it's probably USCIS, which we do not have any kind of control over. So if it is something from USCIS, it's something you have to talk to them about. If you have a specific question about that case, and if you have an OPT that you've been trying to do, I would email Lagos NIV and see if you can get more information.
Awesome. So a student whose visa expires whilst they're still doing their degree program, say you go for a bachelor's, that's 4 years, or PhD, that's 5 years. After 2 years, it expires. does that student need to come home to renew, or can they stay in the US and renew their visa, or can they go to another country like Mexico or Canada? What are their options, especially if there are not enough dates?
It's about being in student status. If you are in student status and the school has you registered as a student, you are fine. However, once you leave the country, once you leave the United States and your visa is no longer valid, you will need to return to an embassy or consulate to get a new visa issued, to apply for renewal. So it really is about it when you leave the United States. When you depart, the visa won't work. Your status is done. So you'll have to apply for a new visa. When you're in country, as long as you're still in status, you're fine.
All right. So Ujua Kwame is asking, will a parent be allowed into the embassy with a child who is over 17 but less than 18?
Yeah, so that's something that's very good. We had this situation recently. It really depends on what our situation is that day. We have had some come in. If they're a minor, yes, for sure. But we're also trying to be very healthy and very safe. So we want to make sure we have less people in the small spaces, just because we're still in a pandemic. So it really, right now, probably not. If they're over the age of 18 specifically, they will probably come by themselves. If there's some other contingent circumstance where the parent needs to be there because the child is a different situation, then you can email and ask for that exception.
Okay, so as long as they're under 18, if they're under 18, it's okay, but if they're over 18, it's not.
No, and I think it might be 17. I'll have to double check that.
Okay.
But yeah, if you're under the age, yes. But if you're over the age, no, they won't be allowed in.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to ask the final question. Now, when my visa expires, do I need to leave the US immediately, or can I stay on to complete, maybe the next semester, and then when I have a break, I can come home to renew? What's your response to that?
So it'll be the same situation. If you're in status with the school and the school is willing to still list you as such, because sometimes they are emailed about this, then you're fine. But once you leave the country, then you need to get a new visa.
All right. So once you leave the US, you need to get a new visa, but as long as you're still maintaining your student status, you're taking classes, you're not doing badly, you're paying your bills, then I guess you should be fine. Thank you, Kendra. This has been very helpful, very, very helpful. We got through so many questions. I'm so glad that you were able to join us today. And to everyone who's out there, I once again apologize if we didn't get to your questions. I still see quite a few questions coming in, but we wanted to keep this to an hour or a little bit over an hour. Again, my name is Chinenye Uwadileke. I am one of 2 Education USA advisors in Lagos, Nigeria, but we also have Education USA centers in 5 other locations throughout the country. We have a center in Abuja, Ibadan, Calabar, Kano, and Jos. So if you have additional questions about the process of studying in the US, please feel free to reach out to any of our centers. The addresses are on our website, educationusa.state.gov, or on our embassy website, ng.usembassy.gov. Thank you so much once again for joining us. Thank you so much to Kendra, who has done a phenomenal job of answering our many questions. And we hope to see you all at the visa window, and we hope to get good news from you when you do get your visas. And we hope to have you join our pre-departure orientation for all students who have been admitted and given a visa, who want to learn about, what to expect when they get to the US. Thank you once again, and we hope to see you in our May edition of the student visa session. Thank you.